Hey, I got some good response for my kind of, for lack of a better word, call to action of wanting to talk to some different opinions about what's going on in the comic industry, and I really want to do hear from some other voices. Now, that's going to anger some, and just I don't know. To be maybe more blunt about it, I don't care. Uh, so, but I do want to talk about an interesting aspect of how we debate and talk about comics and think about comics. Why more information is a good thing, and why there's sometimes pushback on more information. Hey, everybody, this is Perch. I've had kind of two weird moments in the last week that I want to quickly hit on because maybe it will explain a little bit of my point of mind in all this. And the first, I was on the Thinking Critical show last weekend. Again, I don't know exactly when this will air, but a bit ago. And there's like, a topic came up of like Perch likes to take the middle of the road kind of view, and Wes points out, he's like, I've talked to Perch a bunch off the air, and he's got very definite opinions, very salty opinions. In some cases, he get angry about things, and it was a surprise. Like all these people are like, what, really? I had no idea. And I think maybe I'm portraying myself wrong in this channel, but definitely I have opinions. My goal though, whenever possible, and I don't achieve it 100%, is to kind of put out information and not do so with bias as much as I can, and put out information, and then you decide. That it's you decide. But definitely, I have opinions on things, and I get passionate about things, and I get frustrated about things, and I think it's all over the map. I don't, but here's the thing: I don't know why anybody cares. Honestly, what my opinion is, you should make up your own. Like, it's not, don't worry about me. But it is. I think my opinions would probably not line up 100% with anyone's, and I hope that's true of everybody. I definitely, I see some value in some things, some value in other things, but I don't take this absolute point, and that's what I'm going to talk about here in a minute. Is this need to be absolute about things? But the other thing that kind of struck me is I asked for some people help. I had more than one, like multiple people message me and say, "Wow, it's really surprising and interesting that you want to hear from people with other opinions." And I don't know what to make of that. Like, I don't know if that's, am I giving off a vibe that I don't want to hear alternate opinions or other opinions, or but two, are like comic fans so conditioned at this point that we don't want to hear different points of view. I worry it's that second one. That one sucks if that's the case. I mean, yikes! That shouldn't be. Yes, we should. Yes, I want to hear other opinions. Genuinely, like I think we all should. There's nothing wrong as long as the opinion isn't being screamed in your face. It's a good thing. Other people's opinions. I think some people worry that if they hear a point of view other than their own, it's like a virus, and they'll be forced to. It's like this is a very ignorant kind of late '80s view of people who are gay. I remember there being people at school like, man, if you talk to those people, then they'll turn you gay. Like, that's the most absurd thing in the world. It's not like these ideas or these preferences are a virus, and if you hear them suddenly, then you can't help it. So you're going to start reading Tom King. You're going to like Bendis. If you hear a video positive about Bendis, and you're just going to start liking Bendis, and then you're screwed. That's not how the world works. I mean, I hope not. Like, are there people out here that are like that? I mean, yikes. You know, something has gone wrong in your school. But what strikes me is that in comics, and it's why some of these topics are difficult, and I find myself wrapped around the bit with them, is that there's this absolutism that takes place, and it's not just comics; it's everywhere. It's why when the protests happened back in June, and then people were bidding all over each other saying, well, but this couldn't possibly lead to an increase in virus in these states, except as we see from numbers in LA and Houston and Miami and Seattle and other places, it's like, well, what do you know? There was an increase. And of course there's going to be an increase. You have like thousands of people in the same place. Doesn't really matter if they were, protesting against police brutality, or they were protesting for more ice cream, or they were having a rally for some misguided St. Patrick's Day rally way too late. I mean, who knows? It doesn't really matter. It's a ton of people in one location, in densely packed in some cases shouting and other things. Not everybody wearing a mask. Yeah, that's going to spread the virus. You don't need to connect that. But for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, but it became a very like a weirdly contentious argument rather than common sense. And you even see it on the news today. People are still not wanting to just say, yeah, you put a bunch of people in one place and the virus is going to spread there. That's how viruses work. That's how people cough, people talk, people yell, viruses spread. That by saying that, that doesn't mean you're anti-protest. It doesn't mean you're anti-Black Lives Matter or any of those things. It's those are two separate tasks. You can have an opinion about what was going on in the protest, and separately from that, you can have the common sense, hey, crowds equal virus. And frankly, I mean, just to complete the thought a little bit, that's why we have problems with the virus today, frankly, is because as people deny it, it just doesn't pass a common sense test. And so if you're going to say, well, there's no sign that the protests led to any increase in virus, no sign at all. That said, stay home, wear a mask. It's like, too many people are going to look at that going, hey, screw you. You can't, A and B aren't the same. I mean, you can't say this action didn't do anything, but this action will. No grown up will go with that. And so as a result, you're getting people who are more and more casual about washing hands, staying out of crowds, wearing a mask. And so it's going to increase everywhere. Again, what I'm saying shouldn't be political. And if you find yourself getting heated about what I just said, please question why. Because as it relates to comics, it's kind of the same thing. If we talk about, hey, in comics, prices are too expensive. That doesn't mean that the SJWs have infiltrated all of comics and are ruining things. It means the prices are too expensive. As grown human adults with functioning brains, we should be able to look at 50 different topics and assess each one. We don't have to say, well, there's column A and column B. You don't have to do that. Otherwise, it sets up ridiculous things. I reached out for some feedback, but look, people need to recognize that there is silliness that goes on in a lot of these conversations. One of I'm just going to be blunt about it, and this gets people angry, and the people always come in and like, you don't know what you talk about, you. But one reason, I'm just saying, there's probably many and everything else, but one reason why you see such an angry reaction against Comicsgate by people who are not Comicsgate is that when you go on social media like Twitter and you look at people using the tag and kind of mobbing somebody, whether they're right or they're wrong, nobody likes to be shouted at. And this is, I've mentioned this to people who are like, no, we don't do that. Or more likely, it's like, well, I don't do that. And the core of Comicsgate does that. But, there's some other people who are using the tag that are doing that. Well, here's the thing. Nobody knows who these other people are. There's no org chart out there floating around and say, well, these are the official Comicsgate people, these are the unofficial Comicsgate people, these are the Comicsgate NWO red and black and all. And nobody has that chart. And yet people like to assume that it's like, well, this is what we say it is, and therefore everybody should just know. No, that nobody's just going to know what's going on with this stuff. So, that's why the reaction. You don't. You can believe what you want. You can stand up for what you want. You can push for what you want, and that's fine. But you can't express dumbfounded surprise when people react in a certain way. Otherwise, you're being just painfully naive. I think the same thing, by the way, the other direction, the same thing. If you are a aggressive kind of, you have in your profile handler, I'm a socialist, or I'm I proud SJW. You put that there. And then people kind of assume that you're kind of a, cancel culture Karen or whatever it happens to be. It's like you can't express surprise unless you're just painfully naive about everything that's going on with the labels you yourself are using. Now, if you'd like, you can certainly go out there and say, here's what I mean, here's what I stand for, here's what things truly are. That's cool. And I do think clarification is helpful. It's helpful to explain your platform, explain your ideas, and defend them. That's a good thing. But in comics, there is too much kind of absolute surprise. It's like, well, if you don't get it, if you can't read my mind, then screw you. You're the enemy. You're just kind of the biggest kind of craziness. Look, Like it or not, on social media, it's a battleground for a lot of people. They go on and they're not, delicate about their opinions, and they flame and they throw crap around all over the place, and they tend to, if you're a comic creator, and you saw it with, if you're Sean Gordon Murphy and you say, I'm going to leave Twitter, or I've got this crowdfunded campaign, and then in the comments, you have dozens of people going, if you had just pledged your allegiance to Comicsgate, you would have made more money, or you shouldn't have bent the knee with that one statement. And you get like 20 or 30 of those. Here, if I'm not speaking for him. I have no idea if he actually thinks this, but if I was Sean Gordon Murphy and I was seeing that in my thread, my first thought would be, these guys are a bunch of assholes. Sorry. I again, and this is why I want to have somebody on to debate, or not debate, but kind of explain it. It's like you have to realize that if you're getting kind of peppered with these kinds of comments, it is annoying. Even if it's right, the fastest way to actually turn someone against what you believe is to be a jerk about it. It's why, by the way, I think environmentalism is such a fascinating little topic, because on the surface, the idea of, hey, energy sources that do not send black smoke into the air, and not throwing trash on the ground, and trying to conserve our resources, that shouldn't be that controversial of an idea. I think most people can get out behind that, and I say that from the standpoint of kid in the 70s and the 80s. There was the campaign of don't throw your trash all over the ground because it makes for an ugly looking road, and people got on board. You didn't see people standing up there going, hey, you can't tell me not to throw trash on. You didn't see that, because it was just a common sense statement. But as kind of the environmental movement has gotten more and more shrill, and I've had this argument with people before, it's like you're defeating yourself. I'm on board. Hey, do you want to, get a better energy source that's cleaner, more efficient, more effective, more efficient, better than coal? Super. I think, who wouldn't be on board for that? But if you're going to scream at people that, hey, every time you use coal, you are killing babies and animals and the planet and everything else, and you horrible monster, you should be burned alive, that tends to turn people against you, even if they agree with the basics of what you're saying. And this, I think, relates completely to comics. A lot of creators, when they get angry and they make really kind of aggressive tweets and shout at toxic fans and all the rest, it tends to turn people in the middle, or people who don't really have a dog in the fight, it turns them against you. It generates enemies. It would be like if Superman was flying around and he's saving people. There's like a fire in the city and he's saving people. But if the entire time he was saving people, he's like, hey, you know what, you dumb fat Americans, you shouldn't eat so much junk food. You're drinking 64-ounce bottles of soda, and you're smoking, and you're littering, and you're being jerks. As he was saving people, as he was, most of the people would start to be like, you know what, screw you, Superman. That's how people would start to behave, because they just don't like this kind of preachy lecture. And that's where, a lot of the people who have the fan movements or the consumer movements or the other things, it's like, you may have good intentions, may have great platform, great all the rest, but if messaging that platform involves like harping on people every single day, you're going to get people pissed off. This shouldn't. I've struggled with why this has to be a controversial statement. It shouldn't be. And by the way, this is kind of the absolutism. It's the same thing with the protests and all the rest. The answer to what I just said is, well, the other guys do it worse. Maybe, sure. But that doesn't necessarily help win your cause. Whether the other people do it worse or not, people are going to judge your cause for you. That's it. They're not going to, you don't have a kind of a triage that goes on where somebody says, well, this person's being a jerk. Their platform's okay, but they're being a real a-hole about how they present it. And but I have to temper that against the fact that the opposing view or this other thing is they're even bigger a-holes. So I guess I'll side with this group of minor a-holes over this group of major a-holes. That nobody thinks that way. They tend to just stop. They take their money and they go elsewhere. And that's probably the summary of why I'm going into this, why I want to talk to people. And yes, there's definitely going to be some graders, some fans, some other people who are going to say, I don't like that you're giving these guys any kind of platform. You shouldn't be talking to them at all on any side. By the way, don't kid yourself that this is just I bring somebody on to explain whatever the hell Comicsgate is, and they then the people are like, I won't listen to that anymore. I get a not a small amount of messages from people saying, if you bring on an SJW, like I've talked about interviewing Ron Mars, you bring on a Ron Mars, I will never listen to your channel again. Cool. I mean, okay, it's your call, I guess. But who are you defeating? You're defeating yourself. You're playing yourself, I think, in that case. Unless you hate the trash audio, in which case, I don't blame you, But I think that it is that's, wow, I can't believe I'm about to make the analogy I'm about to make. But as Tom King says in his interview, um, we hold the mirror up and we wind up learning more about ourselves than the character that we're talking about. You know what? Scratch that. I don't want to give that analogy. I hate the stupid mirror analogy. It's stupid. All I'm saying is that, you know, if we're curious why some of our ideas are not landing, why they're not winning the hearts and minds, why we seem to have such conflict and seem to have such opposition to certain things, then at some point, at least, we have to ask ourselves: is it the transmission? Is it the output? Is it the way that the ideas are being described? Because there may be a clue in there. If we believe our ideas are really important, helpful, will be make for a better industry, a better, that we need to question: are we doing the most effective job of getting those ideas out to the world? That's what I'm hoping to dig into. Anyway, there you go. A little bit more. A little bit more. So there you have it. Hope you're doing well. Look, leave a comment below. We'll fool through this together. That's what we'll do. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.